Video games are best played, or at least that's the general consensus. But one genre that gets consistent criticism over this point is visual novels. In very broad terms, visual novels themselves are a bit of a static genre, at least that's the impression you'd get by looking at the top-rated visual novels. Most have very linear, albeit interesting, plotlines, with maybe a few key choices here and there usually pertaining to specific endings. I myself have often called them interactive picture books. However, to call them worthless or unentertaining is also wrong. It's hard to make a captivating narrative, and even harder to translate that into video games in a successful way. However, there's the catch. If we look at most visual novels, it's hard to critique them as games. We can talk about narrative all we want, but when talking about video games, one usually expects there to be a mechanical game, something you interact with, not just watch. Now hold on, don't click away, I'm doing a segue. Here we encounter the first potential fallacy, and something I'm sure visual novel fans are jumping at their screen to point out. It's logically unsound to compare an open-world role-playing game to a linear, narrative-heavy visual drama, and that is fair. Still, I'd argue that visual novels inhabit an interesting, almost oxymoronic space within the video game landscape, which is why I've found them, contrary to their mechanical simplicity, hard to get into. Speaking for myself, I fall into the circle of people who are more interested in narrative than mechanics, but funnily enough, I don't much care for visual novels. I still like my games to have mechanics. Best case scenario, those mechanics also serve the narrative. It is this marriage of mechanics and narrative that makes video game criticism so interesting to me, especially the discourse that follows from that. And from this marriage is born a subgenre of visual novels, namely dating sims, that turn the oxymoron upside down and makes the best case for how mechanics and narrative can complete each other for a very engaging result. I will be mentioning quite a few games in this video to support my analysis of Our Life Beginnings and Always, the core subject of this video. I want to preemptively say I'm not here to argue the artistic worth of visual novels. What I am here to do is to make commentary on the mechanics of a type of visual novel, dating sims. Oftentimes, visual novels and dating sims go hand in hand, which makes it hard to separate them. For my analysis, I will be looking at visual novels that aren't traditionally considered dating sims, games that are considered dating sims, and many others when they become relevant. So without further ado, let us begin. So, Our Life is a dating sim, but that doesn't quite do it justice. And admittedly, no words of mine could really sum it up in a satisfying way, so let's actually hear it from the horse's mouth. Our Life Beginnings and Always is a feel-good simulation, as well as a feel-better one, where painful emotions such as sadness, anger, stress, and worry can all be expressed, then met with reassurance, understanding, and support. It's a wholesome experience that faces large stepping stones of life, while having a focus on familiar, everyday moments. With notable amounts of customization for even tiny details, you can enjoy pleasures as simple as having a preferred type of drink, and a neighbor who cares enough to remember what it is. Couldn't have put it better myself. Our Life is a game by American indie studio GB Patch Games. It is currently the most recent official release of theirs, following 3 previous releases by the studio in the same genre, along with one spin-off. Noteworthy about GB Patch is that almost all of their games are free to play, though there are usually DLCs for new routes and similar additions that you do have to pay for. Of Our Life's predecessors, I've only played XOXO Droplets, and comparing it to Our Life is quite interesting. XOXO Droplets pits you against a group of unhinged Zoomers who've forgotten to take their meds. They are bratty, rude, mean, deceptive, and self-serving. Think about tsundere, but they actually hate you. It's your Sisyphean task to woo them, and any side squeezes you think are worth the effort. Gameplay-wise, it's somewhat complex, having to worry about character stats and such, but still very much focuses on the dating aspect instead of going too overboard. Juggle clicks, stats, money, work, and school while getting your boo to go from lifelong enemies to lukewarm acquaintances to eventually reluctant lovers. XOXO Droplets might be one of the most interesting games and dating sims I have ever seen, for it makes a valiant effort to come up with the most irritating characters and making them sympathetic, actually. It's a true test of effort, one which I admittedly failed. It does deserve a video of its own, but I want to underline its most prominent characteristics, because the transition from XOXO Droplets to our life could be explained as being on fire and then jumping into a frozen lake. To save you from watching another 6-hour video, I will be ditching the story summary and getting straight to the analysis. However, a brief introduction is in order. Our life is set in the fictional town of Sunset Bird, California during the summer, so no school for us, thank goodness. Instead, it chops up the story into 4 periods: childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, and full adulthood. During these stages, you will have a default of 5, 10 with DLCs, scenarios per stage. These vary wildly in content, importance, and emotion. The game makes it very easy for you by whittling down the pool of romanceables to only one: Cove James Holden. Cove is a neurotic, sensitive boy who loves the sea. He's also your lucky neighbor. You will be growing up alongside him in Sunset Bird, a modern beachside haven for tourists and seemingly upper middle class locals alike. It evokes a nostalgic feeling of youthful times, but in a much more American suburban and not the Japanese high school rom-com way. For us here in Eastern Europe who know nothing about childhood, it's like watching, I don't know, Boyhood? Close enough. Our life starts with the usual cliche of the protagonist freshly arriving in town and getting to know their surroundings, but oh, wouldn't you know it, you're not the protagonist, or at least not that protagonist. You are Jamie Last, name and basically everything else pending. Usually here is when one would describe the player character, as standard practice for this genre dictates that the story happens to a point of view main character. Not so in our life. Describing the player character is an exercise in futility, because the player character is not completely customizable. It's easier to list what aspects of your character aren't up to your choice. Namely, you are the second adopted child of 2 mothers, you have an older sister named Elizabeth and a cousin Lee, you live in Sunset Bird and cannot move for the majority of your life, your age is dependent on which stage of the game you are playing on, and that's about it. No, I am not exaggerating. Name, gender, gender transition, pronouns, hair, eye, skin color, personality, likes and dislikes, your room, your relationship with your family, friends and neighbors, your extrovertness or introvertness, academic skill, physical prowess, potential job, gender preference and sexual identity, moods, emotions, fears, hopes, aspirations. It is all for you to choose. It's not The Sims, but it's still a surprising assortment of options, allowing you quite a lot of leeway with arguably very little in terms of complex mechanics. Basically, the player character is the equivalent of a DeviantArt OC, and what might sound like a logistical headache to some is a marvel of player freedom to fans of the game like me. Player character could not be a more apt term, for the vessel can be whatever you want it to be. And this is arguably its greatest strength and why I would suggest you go play it now. It's free. And come back later, cause honestly dating sims are ruined for me now, really nothing can compare to Our Life. Above all, Our Life delivers on being a feel-good simulation. But quite honestly, I can't stress enough how revolutionary it feels. Dating sims are nice, but they are naturally limited. You can't actually play as yourself, merely project as best you can. Meanwhile, Our Life is an infinitesimal to complete player expression, and all for the low price of nothing. So let me introduce this idea a little bit through the game's introductory section. The first prompt is about a minute into the game. It asks how your character reflects to all the tourists hanging around Sunset Bird. The first choice is already varied. You are given 3 general temperaments. You can be social, outgoing and extroverted, anxious, reserved, and introverted, or indifferent, detached, and ambivalent. For most choices going forward, this is more or less what you can expect. But here is the catch. You are not locked into anything when choosing from these in-story prompts. You can be anxious about the tourists, then act like a total drama queen in the very next scene. Almost every situation allows you to react differently, adding an infinite level of complexity to your character. What do you do when a stranger is hovering by your house? Will you listen to your mothers about stranger danger, or are you a free spirit ready to meet the world? Or again, do you not care and would rather just go inside instead of being bothered? In this first section with Cliff, Cove's dad, you have 8 times where you can play out your character. You don't have to keep your imagination to yourself. The game will explicitly ask you, what is your character like? And you can respond. It's the height of immersion. The title Our Life does not lie. This is as much your story as it is Cove's. And only having 3 choices is usually the exception. Some choices express the same thing, but differently. Are you happy about something, but instead of yelling and jumping, you would rather just smile warmly? Are you mean or just sassy? The game doesn't even always make you choose something. During your first meeting with Cliff, the $20 he offers you in return for being friends with his son could be so great a number that you can't even decide what to spend it on. And these choices aren't merely irrelevant aesthetics. Some matter quite a lot. The $20, for example, you can either take it, leave it, or run away. Later, you are given chances throughout the different stages of the game to confess to Cove about his dad's secret offer. The reaction can vary as well. Tell him when he is younger, and he will be extremely hurt and have an emotional fit. If you only reveal it when you are adults, he will just laugh it off, finding it very characteristic of his dad. None of this changes the story in any major way, but that is the thing. It is the story. These moments, which is literally what the chapters of the game are called, are the essence of our life. Wow, it really is just like Boyhood, huh? Your choices can vary from minimal to extreme in importance and severity, which makes you feel like you're actually a part of the story. Our life bends over backwards to accommodate as wide a range of emotions and reactions as possible. This is a far cry from most dating sims and visual novels in general, where your choices are usually saved for locking in specific endings or advancing a relationship. Okay, but YouTube video essayist, the voices in my head scream, choices are cool and all, but why is our life still so different to you? Well, I'm glad you asked, audience sock puppet. I'm not trying to put down other visual novels and dating sims here, don't come at me with the pitchforks. Higurashi, Steins Gate, and the rest are certainly interesting stories, but are they good games? Our Life has been with me since the day I first played it, and I have honestly not experienced anything like it before or since. It's a hyperbolic statement, but I do mean it. Our Life means so much to me, both as a concept and as an experience. Playing it felt like reliving my own life, the ups and downs, the heartbreak, and the magic of it all. So is Our Life the Baldur's Gate 3 of dating sims? Is it so massive, so insane, so insurmountable? What does Our Life do that Nintendo don't? Well, let's compare it to some other games. When it comes to variety in meaningful dialogue, we can see Slay the Princess do something similar, even if it isn't quite a dating sim, but more of a subversion of the genre. Even The Sims, which could be argued is a type of dating sim, has customization options up the wazoo, so it can't only be that. Is it the characters? Well, no, not necessarily. There are plenty of games with great characters. I don't feel like I need to elaborate here. So is it truly just the character customization, the, inclusivity options? Well, I can't say there aren't other games that do that too. First thing that comes to mind is A Date with Death, which allows for some basic character customization, very nice. You have a few options for appearance, gender, etc. You can even shift your personality slightly in your texts with death, but it's arguably rather limited still. Then there are games like I Was a Teenage Exocolonist that allow you to fiddle with your identity, what your pronouns are, what you want to be called, preferred complement type, and so on. Still, character customization is usually reserved for RPGs and the like. I wouldn't call Fallout or Baldur's Gate 3 or Mass Effect dating sims, but they still offer this specific fantasy fulfillment. So no, Our Life isn't breaking any new ground here either. Even despite all this, Our Life is still unique in a way that is hard to articulate. But coming back to the larger visual novel and dating sim discourse, the genre often gets ridiculed for supposedly being an inferior art form. While I'm not a fan of visual novels per se, I do feel that this disdain is unwarranted. On the other side of the aisle, people complain that Western developers have made no improvements on the genre and only offer irony-filled subversions, the I'm not like other girls version of video games. This I don't agree with either. Take the aforementioned Slay the Princess, which wonderfully plays on the usual cliches of the female love interest, playing with the male gaze and making masterful commentary on the genre's tropes. We can't say that there are no improvements on the genre, especially in terms of mechanics. There are plenty of Western visual novels and dating sims that bring something new to the table. However, these games are often subversions, I would say. When talking about these games, we can't just sincerely call them visual novel dating sims. There's often a but at the end. Slay the Princess, or alternatively Doki Doki Literature Club, is a visual novel dating sim, but it's actually a meta horror story. I Was a Teenage Exocolonist is a visual novel dating sim, but it's also a deck builder. Boyfriend Dungeon is a visual novel dating sim, but it's also a dungeon crawler. Honey Pop is a visual novel dating sim, but it's also a puzzle game. You see what I mean? Not all visual novel dating sims are like this, but when they don't constrain you to a specific path to get the ending you want, they stray further away from the original understanding of what a visual novel dating sim is. Which isn't a bad thing. My point is that if we want a traditional dating sim, one has to admit that the genre has stayed the same for a long while, which is why Our Life stands out to me. It's not a subversion, it plays exactly to the tune of what you'd expect a dating sim to be, and yet still, it feels like something completely different. To me, the question about what makes Our Life is not quite so easy to answer as just saying it has more of XYZ. Okay, this is getting me nowhere. I'm just talking in circles and confusing you. I'm bringing up so many games and it feels like I still haven't made a concrete argument. Let's zoom out a bit. See what games we are even dealing with, how it all compares and contrasts. Maybe upon further analysis and categorization we can get somewhere. Maybe like, I don't know, a graph or something? Remember how I mentioned in the beginning how visual novels aren't very gameplay oriented? Well, there are more and more exceptions to this, so I'd like to talk about dating sims that do have vital gameplay mechanics that make them different from others in the genre. The dating sim part of dating sims is possibly one of the most varied aspects of these games, so let's see how this is usually handled. The most straightforward type is the cut and dry approach, where you can lock into a specific route through dialogue choices. In the case of games like Steins Gate, there are only a handful of moments that require you to do something. Usually locking in a certain ending only takes one or two specific actions at specific times. This makes for a very streamlined, straightforward experience. These days, there are far fewer single-choice games like this compared to the good old days. An example of a slightly more involved dating sim I present Repurposed. Here, too, you are given very straightforward options. The first chapter introduces the characters and general stakes. Then you are asked to lock in your route. The following chapters will only be about whichever character you want to romance. However, we do see a bit more complexity here. You are given choices after you lock in your route, which will affect your beloved's affection for you, so you have to try not to piss them off too much. Generally though, this isn't particularly hard and does not really require an online guide to follow. In these games you have to accumulate points with your love interest, but in a remarkably stress-free fashion that lets you just enjoy the linear narrative. Other games though are all about that stress. In these games it's much more difficult to get a good ending with your suitor. A classic example is Amnesia Memories. Each of the love interests has a good ending, a normal ending, as well as a few bad endings. These depend on your choices throughout the game. The choices are not necessarily intuitive, however. The magic lies in replaying the game until you know it like the back of your hand. They require a lot of devotion and insight into the characters. Choose wrong and you fail. These are likely one of the least effective in terms of trying to project yourself onto the MC, as you are forced to act in a way that you yourself might disagree with. It's a minefield, having to carefully navigate through unseen threats to go to the end in one piece. It doesn't have to always be very complicated, but it means that there are multiple endings and choices that may have unintended consequences for the story. While there is an ounce of self-discovery to be found here, it generally railways into a one-track game facts walkthrough. Similarly convoluted can be dating sims like Hush Hush and Honey Pop, though in a slightly different way. These follow a single route per character, but to win them over you have to navigate a series of dates. During these dates you must impress your partner, usually through dialogue options, much like in games like Amnesia Memories, etc., but also sometimes by giving gifts or having certain traits that your desired character likes. These dating sims gamify the courting process, as they follow the most standard kind of dating, wherein you must match your partner in personality and interests, but also show devotion and affection through date plans and monetary investments. The most realistic of the bunch, but also one of the most stress-inducing, like real dating. You can play as yourself and make up for any failings with gifts and the like, so it gives you a lot more wiggle room. But as if dating itself wasn't complicated enough, what if you have to, I don't know, save the world? Or help your colony survive on a foreign planet? Real life isn't going to wait for you, Romeo, we got shit to do. These games are your Personas, Tokimeki Memorials, and I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. Rolls right off the tongue. They force you to juggle the dialogue and stat-based dating of the aforementioned courting sims, as well as other responsibilities like school and exams, clubs, jobs, special events and holidays, real life, and even the plot with a capital P, and so on. And, what do you know? We got an actual chart now. My anthropology professor would be so proud. So, we got 5 frameworks for dating sims. To test these models, let's take random visual novels and see where they fall. So let's go over it one more time. From least complex to most complex, we have single choice, where you can opt into a certain route or ending with minimal player interaction. Accumulative games, which has more interaction but still few endings and straightforward dialogue options. Minefield, different endings for characters, unexpected consequences, and careful dialogue navigation. Courting games, which involves dialogue navigation as well as stat and resource management. And finally, management dating sims, which is courting but additionally you also have other responsibilities. So that Steins Gate doesn't feel so alone, we'll set it up on a blind date with Doki Doki Literature Club. A nice, fun game that comments on its own genre. However, mechanically it's still incredibly simple and straightforward. So, single choice it is. Next we have Dream Daddy and Boyfriend Dungeon, a very fun combination of words there, which fall into the accumulative dialogue-based linear structure, which puts them in good company with the beloved classic Clannad. Yes, I made this entire video for this punchline, I hope you're satisfied. Amnesia Memories and Slay the Princess belong in the Minefield category. Self-explanatory. In Hush Hush, Honey Pop, Monster Prom, and Tokimeki Memorial, you can only win over your heartthrob by taking them on dating minigames and sometimes gifting them stuff, which naturally makes them courting type games. Finally, in games like Exocolonist, Growing Up, Persona, and Royal Alchemist, you have to focus as much on other tasks as you do on flirting, requiring a lot of management and multitasking on your part. Now, naturally, this framework isn't perfect, even I can find exceptions to it. Recent indie gem Love Choice breaks a lot of the norms by being more similar to a point-and-click adventure game. As such, it doesn't fall into any of these 5 models. For those curious, XOXO Droplets falls somewhere between courting and management games. That depends how you interpret the job and clubs part of the gameplay. They do directly serve the dating, so you could say it's simply a courting style game, but if you don't manage your club loyalties, then you could fail your run, which leans more towards the management type. You can make a case for either here, so argue away in the comments. On that note, where does our life go? Well, it has no minigames or secondary mechanics outside of the text-based dialogue, so we can rule out management and courting. Its dialogue variety also rules out single choice. Now, here is where things get interesting. The main difference between the Minefield and accumulative models is how complex the dialogue system is. Our life has quite a lot of variety and branching, and you can control many events through your actions and choices, so it's more complex than accumulative games. However, minefield dating sims are, well, minefields, which you need to navigate to get a good ending. To oversimplify, when we talk about endings, we usually mean that you either bag the baddie or fumble them. In our life, you can't really fumble Cove. There is no dramatic bad end screen. You don't get punished if you choose the wrong option because there are no wrong choices. And no endings, at least not how we typically understand them. There are as many endings as one desires. One can end up as reluctant or friendly neighbors, best friends, blooming lovers, or even get married. All of these are valid conclusions to Cove and your story, but you can't fail our life. Or win, really. You can only finish it. It exists in a limbo of infinite variations, or as close as a game made by humans can get. You're here for a feel-good time, after all. This is why I think our life is so unique. There are few, if any, games like this that embody the visual novel dating sim spirit, while still offering a fresh and new experience without trying to subvert the genre. Even XOXO Droplets fits in here somewhere. Visual novels are art, much like literature is. Then what of the question I raised in the beginning? Are visual novels good games? Well, there are visual novels that do have game mechanics. These are often called dating sims. So are dating sims good games? I hope I have established with my chart previously that there are a ton of different dating sims, each catering to a specific type of gameplay. As such, I think we can confidently say that visual novels can make for good games. However, the asterisk at the end is that these gamified visual novels often stray into something else entirely, mixing and mashing genres. While I wholly support experimentation, and I'm glad these games exist, I feel conflicted. Are these visual novel games, or games that have visual novel elements? If it's the latter, then what about authentic visual novels? Where is the game? Where is the innovation? That's the question I asked myself when thinking about making this video. And to me, Our Life is the first visual novel that gives me a satisfying answer. Which is that yes, traditional non-gimmick visual novels can in fact be games, and can be good games at that. They can have meaningful choices, engaging mechanics and player freedom without sacrificing its integrity. And so far, no other game has made me feel like this. So this is the philosophical conundrum I've been sitting on for the past half year. Truth be told, I had finished writing the general body for this script months ago. I think it was even before summer started. There is a lot more I could say about Our Life, the fact that despite its length and variations, it was made by a small indie studio, how strong the character writing is, how it depicts adolescent growth in a fun way, how it makes child characters not annoying as hell, the inclusivity options, hello, the fact that most of the cast of a Western game set in America isn't cishet white people, the fact that the main love interest is autistic without having his condition be downplayed, infantilized, or made fun of. The fact that we are getting 2 love interests in the second game who also break standard dating sim beauty norms. Polyamory without it feeling like cheating, just wow. I could go off. I'm not gonna, but I could. But yeah, in general, this video has been hard to make. It lacked an identity or concrete point. It flowed, and still does flow, horribly. I'm worried that I might have misrepresented visual novels in some way, though I'm genuinely not interested in discrediting them as art or video games. There was also the fact that I wanted this video to be long and thorough, but it never came out quite right. I definitely wasn't going to squeeze 6 hours out of this one. Honestly, I just wanted to be done with this project. I do feel bad about cutting it short like this, as I feel I could analyze more, but I just don't have it in me anymore. I mean, Our Life truly is unique, and it's best illustrated with a personal anecdote of mine. I started step 2 without quite understanding the relationship scale. This is used by the player between steps to set their relationship status with Cove. You can slowly progress through these from indifferent to lovers. I had made a mistake, and accidentally chose indifferent when starting step 2. But I didn't realize my mistake for a while. When I started step 2, Cove was indeed distant, amicable, but not too concerned with me. He didn't feel very comfortable around my character. I spent the remainder of the step trying my best to get Cove to warm up to me. It was the start of our Strangers to Lovers arc, and boy was it actually rather fun. Sure, Cove isn't always the best conversationalist, even if he does like you, but there was something rewarding about making him smile and laugh when he shouldn't care about my character at all. By the following step, I had corrected my mistake, and this transition felt surprisingly natural. It felt like he really warmed up to me, like I was able to break his nervous outer shell and find a ray of sunshine underneath. This is only one of the many stories you can create through emergent gameplay, and something you will almost never see in traditional visual novels. Name me one other game where such a scenario unfolds unscripted. Another way the game is just great is just Cove himself. Cove in general is just so very cute. He dismantles the usual love interest tropes that you see in most dating sims, the reason being that most dating sims are heavily influenced by the Japanese standard, meaning you have very explicit type characters. Your childhood friends, strong silent types, the flirty divas, the nerdy otakus, you get the idea. Western games aren't devoid of these character archetypes, but generally the cast of love interests have all very similar compositions across games. And that's understandable. You gotta market your game to different types of people. Everyone will like something different, and basing your characters off archetypes is common practice. Our Life is one of very few games I can name that has only one main love interest. This already complicates the mission of the dating sim to be about fulfilling a romance fantasy. How can you do that if you are not interested in the love interest? Well, you need not fear, because Cove manages to break a lot of stereotypes and cliches that you'd usually expect. First things first, Cove will respond to all kinds of approaches. Cove does not require you to play a certain way or make certain choices, or be a certain kind of person, as is the case with most dating sims. More often than not in these games, you have to conform to the expectations of whoever you are trying to win over, which is what has put me off from this genre for so long. It's an understandable design principle and quite realistic. Most everyone has a type, and even if they say they don't, they won't be compatible with everyone. However, it makes me feel disingenuous when I have to choose dialogue options that I would never choose just because a character dislikes it if I disagree with them. In Our Life, Cove accepts you as you are. Admittedly, this is a me thing, but it's hard to roleplay or project yourself onto the EMC under such restrictions. There is fun to be found in min-maxing, but goddamn, is it too much to ask to just fall in love? Why does it have to be stressful in games too? It's complicated enough in real life. I could talk about one of my favorite moments in video games ever, but I'm already rambling enough as it is. And honestly, what could I possibly say that you won't find out yourself by just playing? The moments are so mundane, so small in the grand scheme of things, but they allow a quiet, intimate look into the life of two kids growing up next to each other. It is so personal, but also so detached from the typical action. We see no grand plot. In fact, we are only allowed glimpses between big milestones like graduations, anniversaries, first day of school, or college, or moving out, or taking your driver's exam, or... Okay, this is literally just boyhood. I can't be the only one seeing it, right? Our Life let me express my anxieties about growing up as I graduated from high school. It was comforting in a very personal way, which very few games have been able to achieve for me. The moment at the end of step 4, when you stand in the poppy field for the last time, it's bittersweet. You try to stay on the poppy hill with the fireflies, and Cove insists that it's time to go. Your time with this game is at an end, but you can always come back. And that's what I have been doing these past 3 years. However, this will be my last ride. I have a lot of great memories here. It's even let me meet important people in real life through the fandom and explore myself and my identity in ways I could never before. But we all grow up sooner or later, whether we want to or not. To the few of you who have made it this far, congratulations! I hope it was enjoyable. It's a wild turn from my previous video, that's for sure. For those wondering what more there is to come, I can't say, quite honestly. This has taken quite a while, since during writing I was still finishing up my bachelor's thesis, and now as I am recording I will be starting my master's course. I have plenty of ideas, but they are all rather ambitious, and I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver as I am prone to do. But I think I know what my next video will be. When it will come out, only time will tell. So I ask that you be patient. I promise it will be worth the wait. I hope. And yeah, that's really all I have to say. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye bye.